Greetings, happy Sunday. Hello, everyone. We hope that you are well today and that you're at your highest level of mental, physical, and spiritual strength. And we hope that you survive Colonialist Day and that you're ready for action. And we are glad that you decided to join us for this week's episode of Our Ancestors' Voices. Our topic today is the propaganda war against you, against us. And we're going to be talking about how the corporatization of social media to instill consistent anti-African, anti-human messages throughout social media platforms. So that's going to be the extent of the program today, and we're glad that you're here to join us for it. And we, of course, give honor and respect to the indigenous people, thinking about them a lot, obviously, over this so-called colonialist holiday weekend, thinking about them and their struggle to get justice, which is their land back. And thinking about how people love to say, I don't celebrate Thanksgiving. And then in the next sentence, they tell you Happy Thanksgiving. I just still can't really understand that one. But actually, I do understand it. I know they don't understand it. But anyway, the propaganda war continues. And that's what we want to talk about here today. So honor and respect to the indigenous people for continuing their fight. I know here where I am, they had another very large crowd at Alcatraz on the morning of the colonialist holiday. They do that to commemorate indigenous people against the backdrop of these backward institutions that promote capitalism and imperialism. So we also give honor and respect, of course, to our ancestors, our African ancestors, who are really the only reason why we continue to exist. And our objective is to do everything we can to reach our potential and fulfilling and respecting their legacy. So we're glad that you joined us today, and we'll just go into our brief introductions for the program, and just saying, as we always do, that Our Ancestors' Voices is sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party, the AAPRP. And the AAPRP is a revolutionary, independent, mass Pan-African political party that is based in Africa. And our objective is Pan-Africanism, which we define correctly as one unified socialist Africa. And our work to achieve Pan-Africanism is outlined in Nkrumah's Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, which is displayed on this page. And Our Ancestors' Voices is hosted each week by APRP organizers, myself, Ajamu, and Shakura, my daughter. And so we just are glad that you're here with us today. And to get us started, I'll turn it over to Shakura.
Oh, thank you so much. Greetings, greetings. I just sneezed right before you passed it to me because the inhumanity is just, it's disgusting. And I have a lot of anger towards it as I think more and more about just where we are and how much we need to continue pushing the consistency in terms of being committed to our principles. So thank you so much for passing that. Greetings, everyone. We hope you are well. This is going to continue to be a really, really, really difficult time where we're going to have to remember why we are fighting for justice. We're going to have to remember why some of us have already chosen the organizations that are working for justice that we want to be in, whereas some of us still have not made that decision. And this is the time now, family. The time is now, because this quote unquote holiday ritual or holiday season, if you will, is revving up in every way possible. And you are going to need all of the political education stability that you can get your hands on to help your mental health navigate through these next couple of months as best as you know how. We strongly would recommend that you join an organization that is working for justice. And the sooner you do that, the sooner you will start to have more factual based evidence as to why not only do we deserve truth and justice, but also how we have been fighting to get those particular values or morals given back to us, because some people are still holding on to them and not interested in giving them to us. But if you are not up to date on your political education, then you're not going to know of all of the different examples of colonized people, poor people, marginalized people, folks who identify as LGBTQ, people who identify as being differently abled. You're not going to know of all of these different examples of folks who have been fighting back. You know, it's really key that we understand how vicious, but also how effective propaganda can really, really be, because it has had years of practice in terms of exposing lies and mistruths. This is not the first rodeo with capitalist media creating and framing messages to send to us. They've been doing this for a very, very long time. They can do it with their eyes closed, and they can do it in their sleep. They're so good at it. And this is why the political education is so important. We talk all the time about how important political education is. We talk all the time about it. But I want to really focus today on how you can actually use it. Because if you really are up to date on your political education, then that means you're more aware of the fact that the truth has been hiding from you. That means you're more aware of it because you're actually accessing information that is going against everything you have always known. It's going against everything that you've always been taught. And it's going against some things that you probably were already being critical of, but you just didn't have the support or the resources to really pinpoint why you were already thinking twice about something. Having access to truth and justice is not a guarantee for a lot of people who are oppressed, but yet being in a system where power and money and greed is more important than humanity makes it even harder for people to have access, unlimited access, I'll say, to truth and justice. So political education is a step towards ascertaining political education, which would lead essentially to you having truth and justice, because you can use those skills, those tools, that information to start to develop ways that you can find a way to support your people. I had one of the best work study meetings that we've had in a long time yesterday, and we're reading a new book that I'm so excited about, Women in Revolution, African Women in Revolution, excuse me, by W.O. Maloba. I think that's how you say their last name. And this comrade was talking about some different examples of African femme folks fighting in different armies that were resisting colonialism on the African continent. And this is precisely why I'm saying increasing your political education is really the only option that we have. Because if we don't have information to know that our people have been fighting, then we're going to be less involved in terms of understanding that we have the capability to do what our ancestors have done. This also means that when people tell us mistruths and they tell us lies, we're not going to be able to fight back ideologically. We're not going to be able to fight back physically. We're not going to be able to fight back mentally or spiritually, because we literally have someone else telling us about who we are. How backwards is that? And it'd be different if we didn't have access to the information, but we do. We're just choosing to be ignorant. We're choosing not to access it, which is worse than not having access to it. Because you can think about people all around the world who are so hungry for knowledge, they're so hungry for education, they would stop at anything to have access to it. Meanwhile, you have opportunities where you can look up some political education resources and materials. You can look up some Pan-Africanist authors that we've already mentioned. But even doing your own research, you can look them up. You can look up some authors that are representing our indigenous comrades, or some authors that are representing a more social justice direction with our Asian descent comrades. The information is out there. That's a dialectical benefit of having the internet, is the information is out there. But not choosing to educate yourself, and not choosing to educate yourself about who you are, is a ignorant privilege that we simply cannot ascertain or celebrate. We just cannot. We cannot. Because without that political education, we're not really going to know what really happened. And I'm so grateful that we have chose to read this book, because now we have a better understanding of what was going on in Kenya. Now we have a better understanding of what was going on in Mozambique. And just how detrimental not only colonialism, but sexism and patriarchy have been and were to our African femme comrades who were literally putting their lives on the line for us because they understood that colonialism and neocolonialism had to go and needs to go. So they formed military so that they could fight against it. And the only reason I would have access to that is because we just discussed it yesterday in work study. Otherwise, I would be no different from anyone else who has no factual knowledge about our people fighting back. And more importantly, most of us can explain some type of example of our people fighting back, but usually it's centered from a male perspective. These are African femme marginalized folks who are doing the violence and protecting our continent. A lot of us simply just cannot do that, where we can actually name off people who are not of the same gender as us in terms of examples of Africa fighting back. We're not taught to believe that. We're not taught to accept that. We're taught to believe that Africa is weak. We're taught to believe that there is nothing in Africa worth value. We're taught to believe that Africa is not a place that you would want to go. And some of that is based on white supremacy, but a lot of it is based on colonialism. A lot of it is based on Eurocentric values. And the most important piece is it's based on propaganda, because propaganda is rooted with all of that: white supremacy, Eurocentric values, colonialism. And so propaganda has made it its mission to tell you about yourself and to stop you from getting the real 100% facts. Because if you really had that information, you would have a different perspective. This deserving truth and justice piece, y'all, it's more serious than you know. Because as I said, we've been talking to you about increasing your political education, but what you should start to understand is you're going to be using that political education, if you choose to seek it, you're going to be using that political education in multiple avenues of your life. Yes, you'll be using it when you're in some type of work study process or with your organization that's working for justice, if you have a work study in that organization. You might even be using it when you are having a conversation with someone on a college campus, or maybe you've been invited to speak at a conference. You'll be using your political education in those regards. I use my PE in every aspect of my life. When I write my papers, when I go to conferences, when I'm having conversations with people after I've spoke, in every aspect, because it becomes a part of you. It becomes a part of your identity. Don't you see? If you don't have access to that PE, then you're not going to be able to really grow as a person who is more intelligent in terms of really sharing the same truth that we had denied to us. You are reincarnating and decolonializing the same trauma that our people went through by finding truth and disputing it and disseminating it. Don't you see how powerful that is? I mean, that is so incredible. That is one of the best ways that we can defend ourselves. But you have to make a choice. And it's not just about speaking at conferences, it's not just about talking to someone that may come up to you after your presentation. When you choose to increase your political education, especially for this time of year, it's about correcting family members who have been brainwashed and who have been misfed the truth by propaganda capitalist media. We all have to make those decisions. And sometimes it's going to be very uncomfortable when your family members say some ignorant, really out of line, out of neck stuff. And you need to make a decision of what kind of values and principles you are committed to. It might not make you feel good, but if you don't have an opportunity to correct that propagandist behavior, then it's going to continue to perpetuate. And the next thing you know, your godchild is going to be spewing that propaganda. And then ignorance is going to pass through your lineage. And now the oldest person in your family is going to be ignorant all the way down to the youngest born who's still wearing diapers. I mean, what kind of sense does that make? We deserve to give our youth a better world, which means telling them the truth and giving them information so that they can not only seek justice, but also maintain it. So when we find ourselves in situations where our family members are using the same propaganda that we're so heavily trying to fight against, we have a responsibility to speak up against that, you all. I was just explaining to my dad how frustrated I was a couple of weeks ago because my aunt knows nothing about Occupy Palestine. And propaganda, as I said, is a very effective tool in terms of brainwashing and teaching one specific frame of mind. not taking into account the inhumanity, the oppression, the dehumanization, the mass genocide, not taking any of those things into account, because that's the danger when you don't have political education. Propaganda can tell you whatever they want your brain to know. And if you are not smart enough to then find and cross check and make sure that information is legit, then you are accepting the lies, you are accepting the mistruths, and you yourself are perpetuating very, very continued in ignorance. And that is up to you to decide if you want to continue that or not. That is not on propaganda and capitalism. That is definitely a self-identified decision. You have to make a choice. And that's why we're encouraging you to join an organization that's working for justice, because when you join an organization that's working for justice, hopefully one that wants to increase your political education, or maybe you can make the argument that they should start incorporating PE, then you can find ways to be able to have more structure and more knowledge and more evidence with you. As I just said, if you're in an organization that's working for justice, then you can have these conversations with your family members and you'll feel more confident in doing it. The first couple of times it's going to be scary and nerve-wracking. Of course, that's what anything, when you take a stand, it's always going to be risky. Life is risky. When you leave your door, if you're privileged to have a roof over your head, it's risky. When you walk outside, you can die. Anything can happen, right? But at the end of the day, if you know that the oppression of Palestinian people or the oppression of indigenous people needs to be spoke about, if you know that the oppression of African people needs to be spoken about, then you have a responsibility to protect them and to do everything you can to get that information out there. We don't have the luxury of letting people be ignorant. We don't have that luxury. That's a privilege, and we don't have it, y'all. That's unfortunate. It's not fair. I know, I get it. But so what? What we do have is information that can change the whole world's perspective in terms of how we think about colonialism, how we think about colonized people and the impact that colonialism has had on them, and how we think about ways that we actually need to stop following propagandist media, because we now have a better understanding that they have not been sharing the truth this entire time. Now, that's going to take some time, but at least it's a start to be able to start to get access to new information. You really want to start to think for yourself. That's what we've been trying to tell you all this whole time. And if you rely too much on an agenda that someone else has set, someone who is not basing their agenda on humanity, they're not basing their agenda on good, decent social justice movements or truth or loving justice people, if they're not basing it on any of those concepts that you seem to follow, that you are committed to, then why the heck would you listen to them? They do not have your best interests at heart. The best interest that they have at heart is based on manipulating power and maintaining it. The best interest that they have is based on doing what they have to do, which does not take into account how those choices are going to affect you. The best interest has everything to do with killing the people who are a threat and continuing to oppress anyone else who cannot understand that the objective is to maintain power. The objective is to profit and make money. The objective is to make sure that people continue to be mistreated and dehumanized as much as possible. So if you don't agree with any of those things, dehumanizing people, killing people, oppressing people, then why would you listen to the media that is precisely doing those same things and has access to doing those same things and has access to reporting on those things being done? Why wouldn't you take it upon yourself to try a different way, to look at a new avenue? This photo we see on the slide may not even make sense to some of you because your political education is in dire need of being resuscitated. But this photo makes perfect sense to me. It makes perfect sense to me because everything that we know is based on the African continent and the people that come from it. Everything we know, especially the resources that I am using right now to communicate with you on, they are based on the continent. And if you had access to a political education, then you would understand what I'm talking about. When we think about the coltan and the cobalt, when we think about it coming from the Congo, I think so much about the abuse that is taking place with the diamonds in the Congo and how they're being cleaned in occupied Palestine and how Palestinians are not having any access to that type of money and profits. And the same with the Africans who are dying while they're mining for diamonds. Because if you know anything about mining for diamonds, as we've talked about on this seminar, then you know from a public health standpoint, there are serious, serious chronological respiratory issues that can occur in your lung area, along with black lung, you know what I'm saying? Cancerous, carcinogenic opportunities that are on face. And so all these different things just really make us think a little bit more about why it's so important for us to determine and control the kind of information that we decide that we want to believe. That's literally going to be the only thing that's going to save us. Now, there is good news. The good news is we have the key to ensuring that we can get what rightfully belongs to us. And before I switch to the next slide, I'll just remind you all we have our QR code in the upper right corner because we are also trying to increase our political education for our young children, our young comrades in Burkina Faso, so that we can raise money for them to not have to read these colonialist texts that are already available to them by other people who do not have Africa's best interest at heart. So please, please, please consider donating if you have not already done so. Thank you. Next slide, please. So if you forget everything we have said tonight, you just have to understand that capitalism has never told the truth ever. Just understand that. Capitalism has never told the truth ever. My best friend and I were talking the other day, and I think she said, you know, oh, I don't have any peanut butter. She's like, man, who can I blame that on? And I was like, capitalism. And she was like, what? And I was like, yeah, because the price of peanuts to grow peanuts has probably increased since the quarantine and the lockdown. And you probably haven't been able to find the specific peanut butter you're looking for, or maybe you didn't know that the price inflated, so you weren't able to buy it when you went to buy it, or maybe it was not in stock because so many people bought it out because of supply and demand because it wasn't available, and then it became available, and now you couldn't buy it because it's not on the shelf. That's capitalism. That's capitalism. And then I said, any problems that exist in the world, capitalism can be to blame for it. And then to make matters worse, capitalism won't take any responsibility. They will lie through their teeth. And people who protect capitalism will lie through their teeth because the objective is to get you off their trail. That's the objective. The objective is to not let you know that they are at fault and they are responsible for what's happening. Which, again, if you had an increase in political education, then you would know everything that capitalism has spewed out has never been based on trust. You would know that because there's too many examples of capitalism not valuing humanity and continuing to put their needs first, which is protecting private corporations to continue making that money while they kill people, making that money while they rape people, making that money while they kidnap people, making that money while they put people in horrid conditions, such as mining for diamonds, such as looking for other materials in unsafe situations, making it very difficult for children to literally walk to school. These are all examples of why capitalism is a system that is not benefiting humanity because it doesn't value humanity. It does not care about people. That's why it doesn't matter if people are dying. And that's why the focus is not on the fact that for the last 70 years, Palestinians have been dying. That's capitalism's way of saying we need to switch the narrative and make you focus on Israel, when the bottom line is there is no Israel. It's always been Palestine. That's the bottom line. And if you are not protected by political education, then propaganda will convince you that a made up location is actually a very real location. If you let propaganda do it, it will be very effective in doing that. So that's why you need to increase your political education so they cannot do the runaround with you and not do the okey doke with you. You got to be smarter than that. You got to be smarter than that. And the best rule of thumb is knowing, was this put out by capitalism? Okay, it's probably a 99.99999% chance that this is probably not based on truth. Just assume that. Just assume that. Just assume it. It'll protect you. It'll save you so much time. It'll save you the gray hairs. It'll save you the frown lines. It'll save it because nothing has ever been based on truth in a system that does not value people. As I said, we're not important. The money being made is important. You should already know that's going to be a problem. So they're going to lie and do whatever they can to keep that money being made because that's the number one objective. That's the only thing that matters. You have to understand that. That's the only thing that matters. And so we can think about Kwame Ture and how he said it often. History has proven him correct. In fact, he added that when capitalism tells the truth, it is only because of a double lie. So when they do share the truth, you have to really break this down. This is crazy. When they do share the truth, it's only because there have been two lies before it. That's the only reason that they would tell the truth, because they're just trying to cover their tracks. So we have to continue to remember we have a choice, we have a responsibility, not only to join an organization that's working for justice, but to protect the integrity of information that we know is based on lies. And the best way to do that protecting is to increase our political education. We cannot access that without political education, you all. And my dad is going to talk in a moment about what some actual primary sources look like in terms of how we can increase our political education, because you cannot trust the same capitalist propaganda media to now find the truth and to give you information that's going to be based on justice and is going to be based on humanity. It's simply impossible. Why would capitalism give you access to information that is based on people being able to free from their injustices and to be able to free from their inhumane treatments? That would affect the money profit. That would affect the money being developed. They're not going to do that. They're going to continue to lie to you. That's exactly why they're lying to you now, because they don't want you to know how powerful you are. They don't want you to know that. They want you to think there's something incredibly wrong with you, because as long as you think that, you'll continue to spend money trying to fix a problem that never existed. You'll continue trying to spend money, whether it's whitening your teeth, whether it's getting a new car. There's all these stupid car commercials now because it's the holiday season, right? They're trying to clear out these lots before the end of the year. So they're pushing and telling you that these APRs are such a low finance fee, when the bottom line is there's nothing wrong with the car you have. But if you allow propaganda to get in your head, if you allow them to make you feel like you are nothing, they will win you all. That's why you need more political education, because you can already be prepared to be like, that's BS, and I'm not even being into that. I'm not trying to hear that. See, you know what I mean? Like, that's really what that comes from. So increase your political education. Join an organization that's working for justice. Please support our QR code so that we can give some authentic Pan-African revolutionary books to our youth. And let's continue to make this world a better place by speaking out against injustices. But we can't speak out from an ignorant base. We can only speak out based on evidence. And how do we get evidence? By looking at primary sources that are based on political education. From Pan-Africanists that we honor and respect, from indigenous people that we honor and respect, from Asian people that we honor and respect. Ashe.
Ashe, Shakura, thank you. And we will just continue on. Challenges. We'll just continue on and talk about this concept of propaganda, right? And really just talking about understanding how and how it's used against us, right? So first we'll just focus on TikTok, since that's the seems to be the most popular one now. I know Instagram, there are many of them that are popular, but TikTok is really based on the numbers, the one that most people are using. Over 300 million people use TikTok today, have TikTok accounts. That's the definition of that. 300 million people on the planet Earth, all over the world, right? But one of the things that happens, and this is what Shakura is getting at, is that we hear about TikTok every day. There's nobody hearing me say TikTok that just, what is that? I don't know what that is. Everybody knows what it is. A lot of you more than likely use it. But we don't usually, once we get to that point, it becomes very difficult for us to dig any deeper and for people to get any other information about it. So that's what we want to do today, is share some of the information and the concepts. So TikTok, the platform, is owned by a Chinese company called ByteDance Ltd. Okay. And that's the company that owns it. Now, this is a Hong Kong based company, and you have to understand because there's so much misinformation and reactionary propaganda about China attacking the Chinese Revolution from 1949. So you have to do work around that. And one day we'll do a workshop on China just to give people some understanding of it. But just for the sake of this discussion today, Hong Kong was colonized by the British uh, soon after the Chinese Revolution of 1949. The British have held it, and in 1997, the British were supposed to relinquish Hong Kong in another, I can't remember if it's 30 or 50 years. I don't know why I'm blinked out on that, after 1997. And so whatever that is, that period is approaching, obviously. And so, now these companies are scrambling to try to maintain their existence as private corporations once China's Beijing government, the Communist Party government, takes back control of Hong Kong. Because you should understand that, Hong Kong was a part of China. It was stolen from them. Taiwan was a part of China. It was stolen from them. And there are a couple of other territories that were a part of China that were stolen from them. And, now they talk to you about it like China is wrong for wanting to get their territories back, but then they can support the Zionist effort to take over occupied Palestine when that was never theirs to begin with. So this is what we're talking about, right? So ByteDance Ltd. And this is a Chinese corporation. And the reason why I wanted to give that brief history that I just gave, it's not sufficient, but just to help you understand that this is a private corporation. This is not, because if you listen to, these clowns like Donald Trump and Joe Biden and all these other cracker clowns out here, and the Negro wannabes that parrot everything these cracker clowns say, then you'll think that ByteTime Ltd. And TikTok is owned by the socialist government in China. And that's not true. That's why I wanted to explain to you about Hong Kong and the contradiction of colonialism in Hong Kong, because this Chinese company, ByteDance Ltd., is actually registered in the Cayman Islands, which is what a lot of multinational corporations do. Because if you know the reality, Cayman Islands doesn't have the level of regulation that's required for you if you open a bank account here, for example. Cayman Islands is the new Switzerland. It used to be, if you had money you didn't want to be traced, you opened a bank account, you opened a Swiss bank account. Now the authorities have become hip to that practice. So now a lot of people do it through the Cayman Islands. And so this is a private capitalist corporation that owns TikTok. That's the point I'm trying to make to you all. It has nothing to do with whatever is happening in mainland China. Absolutely nothing to do. In fact, you have more to do with owning TikTok than mainland China does. That's an important point that has to be made, because a lot of us believe that, well, they're using TikTok to bring socialism to the U.S. I only wish that was true, but there's nothing about that that's true. It's a private corporation. And TikTok, the way TikTok functions is it's used this up to recent times, up to this year, it's used what was called a creator fund. It's no longer active, but they use this creator fund. And the way this creator fund works, you all, is that it pays content creators 4 cents for every 1,000 views that you get for a TikTok video. And so this fund is, it was over $1 billion fund. They have another fund in place now that's even broader than the creator fund, right? But this is the process that they use, is that they use that. So if you have a video that gets 1 million views, then they'll pay you $5,000 US dollars, right? And it goes on and on. If you get more than that, you get more money. So now there's a financial incentive. These videos are not just people having fun in their house, dancing or acting a fool or doing whatever they're doing. There's a strong financial incentive behind making these videos. And of course, there are a lot of other companies that invest into ByteDance Ltd., investing into TikTok. And some of those corporations are, they're venture capitalist corporations. And what is a venture capitalist corporation? And we have to define these things because everybody goes to school here, but they don't teach you anything in these schools because they don't want you to know anything in these schools. They just want you to graduate from their schools, get a job, buy a bunch of BS, and pay taxes. That's all you're supposed to do in these capitalist systems. You're not supposed to understand how the system works, and most of us aren't interested in understanding. As long as we can get enough to buy the car, like Shakur talked about, then we're satisfied with that. Go on a vacation once a year, defecate every day, don't get stuck on the toilet doing that, eat everything we want to eat, have as much sex as we want to have, then most of us, that's enough. That's all we want out of life. So that's why we don't understand these basic things. But the way what venture capitalism is you have capitalism is a system where the means of production are owned by private entities for private profit. That's the definition of capitalism. And when somebody is a venture capitalist, that means they take capital, which is money that serves the exclusive purpose of being invested to make more money. It's not money that you use to pay bills. If you're talking about you're a capitalist and the only money you have is probably going to be spent within the next couple of months, you're not a capitalist. You don't have any capital. Capital is money you don't use for anything except investing into making more money, right? And it has to be a significant amount. It's not saying, well, I invested $5 in the domino game down the street. That doesn't make you a capitalist. It has to be millions of dollars that you're investing to make millions more dollars, to make billions of dollars. That's and owning resources in the course of that. Now, these are the things that bring you into the capitalist conversation. All right. So venture capitalists go out and seek different mechanisms to invest their money. They want to infuse capital into products, into projects to make themselves more money. So there are various venture capitalist corporations like the Sequoia Capital and Kohlberg, Kravis, and Roberts Capital. And these are the types of corporations that invest into TikTok. And so there's billions of dollars floating around in TikTok. And this is why the enemies of humanity use TikTok against us as a propaganda mechanism. Because as I said, there are 300 million people on it. They know the level of influence. And that's, again, understand that's 300 million people who have accounts. Now, there are probably 3 times that many people who are watching videos don't have a TikTok account, but the videos flow through YouTube and all these other social media platforms, Facebook, so you can see them even if you don't have an active TikTok account. So this is the influence that this platform has. And so if you look at these venture capitalist corporations like Sequoia Capital, they invest heavily in Apple, for example. They are a heavy investor in the Apple Corporation. And then if you've been following what we talk about, or if you've been following something other than BET and all that other crazy nonsense, then, you know that Apple makes billions in profits annually, as Shakur mentioned, from exploiting Congolese resources, whether it's columbite, tantalite, coltan, which is what is used to in every device that gives or receives a signal, so the internet cannot work without coltan, or cobalt, which is used to create, car batteries. The batteries that run in these electric cars wouldn't work without cobalt. All of these cobalt, coltan, you can't get them in plentiful supply from many places. And the Congo in Central Africa has higher reserves on both of those mineral resources than any other place on the planet Earth. So if Sequoia Capital is investing heavily in Apple, and they're investing heavily in TikTok, and Apple makes profits, billions of dollars of profits off of the exploitation of our people in the Congo, then it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out why you have so many goddamn videos on TikTok that are trying to soften what's happening to our people in the Congo. They even got these coons, these certified coons on TikTok who sit there and they're sitting there on the screen. You've seen them. They're sitting there on the screen staring at you like they're listening to an analysis. The most worthless, pitiful, disgraceful coons on the planet Earth. And they're sitting there, and then you have some European voice narrative that's talking about the Congo is actually not what people say it is. It's all these African regimes have existed there, and they've been corrupt, and that's why you have problems in the Congo. And then you have these stupid ass Negroes with their face on the screen during these videos, shaking their goddamn heads like the idiots that they are. And I'm saying it like that, you all, because this is the game they play against us. Because for those of us who take time to study our mother Africa, then we know that the Congo hasn't had the corrupt regimes that the Congo has had have been corrupt because of imperialism. Mobutu Sese Seko ruled the Congo from 1961 until 1997, and all of those years, he was a CIA-backed man. He came to power when they assassinated Patrice Lumumba and sabotaged the National Congolese movement in the Congo. But Lumumba's government is a government that was the first government in the Congo. In 1960, the first democratic election they had in the Congo was in 1960. And the next year, they sabotaged the damn government. Not the damn government, the damn imperialists sabotaged the government. And it's been nothing but neo-colonialism in the Congo since then. So who the hell are these corrupt regimes that they're talking about in the Congo, except the one that their masters put in place? So you will never be able to convince us that this is anything other than a coordinated effort by these capitalists to confuse us about what's happening in our motherland. And we're at fault because we sit there, oh, well, yeah, they don't say that's what they say, that they corrupt over there. Them Africans, they don't like us. Take yourself on top of a 5-story building and jump head first. Do us all a damn favor by doing that. If you're not going to step it up and try to do at least a little better in terms of understanding what's going on in the world. Because TikTok is full of these kind of videos, and that they either justify or downplay the suffering in the Congo. And I even saw one that was trying to say that, well, King Leopold, who was the Belgian king who killed millions of our people in the Congo in 1910 to 1920 something, killed millions of our people in the Congo, and did it to steal the ivory because that was the mineral resource they were stealing from the Congo during that time, and did that. And then I even saw one video that was trying to say, well, that didn't really happen. Holocaust survivors, African Holocaust, or deniers rather, African Holocaust deniers. So this is why we have to step up our game so that we know what we're talking about, because these people are running game on us. They're running these videos, and they're enticing people to make them because the people know if they get enough clicks, they can make money doing it. And that's how the process works. It's not just housewives making a video with their kids on TikTok. It's a propaganda mechanism for the capitalist system. That's what it is. And so some truths about capitalist propaganda that we have to talk about is that most people get their information through non-quote unquote traditional sources. And what that means is that we know that most people today in 2023 and beyond, they aren't turning on the TV to look at news. But that's not necessarily meaning that they're getting better information or worse information. All it means is that the Rockefeller family owns and controlling interests in all of the NBC affiliates. These other capitalist class families own it and all the rest of them. But if you say, well, I don't watch that, I go to these other sources, then these sources, like we just displayed, they're also being manipulated by capitalist interests as well to promote the message and the narrative that they want you to have to justify what they're doing around the world to exploit the masses of humanity. So that's what they're doing. And that means that since this is reality, You have all of these different sources, all of these social media sources that are operational, and there's absolutely there's no check and balance in the capitalist entities. I'm talking about the news stations. They don't even. I mean, even that what was his name? They used to be on television news in this backward country. I can't remember his name. Uh, Brokaw, Tom Brokaw. He used to be a network news reporter on NBC, and he retired. And he at his retirement speech, that old man even said it. He said that there's no news in this country anymore. It's all entertainment. He's absolutely right. He's absolutely right. You turn on the morning news. Try it tomorrow. Turn on the morning news, and they're talking about absolute nonsense. They're talking about somebody that wrestled with a panda bear. They're talking about somebody who rode a bike around a track, some little kid, a 2-year-old, 3-year-old kid rode a tricycle around a high school track. That's the kind of nonsense they're talking about. That's not news. That's what they're talking about on the news, or it's celebrity focus. They're talking about all these celebrities and all the nonsense that they vomit out and spew out of their mouths. There's no news. There's nothing on there even from a bias standpoint, telling you what's happening in the Sahel region of Africa, telling you what's happening in the Congo. Right now, there's a woman that's raped in the Congo every 48 seconds. And that's been happening for years, you all. And nobody's reporting. You're not hearing that on it. You didn't even know that until I just said it. 90% of the people that hear this, because it's not on the capitalist news. So they don't talk about any of that stuff. And that's what that man Brokaw was talking about. But at least with that entity, at least what they had several years ago, there was at least some level, because there were only so many sources, right? There was, back when I was growing up, there was ABC, NBC, CBS, and then there were 2 or 3 little local channels that you had, and that was it. So it was much more competitive for them to have to at least pretend to tell the truth, because there were only so many sources, and people, had the opportunity to be focused in on all of them. Now there's millions of sources providing information. There's no way to have any accountability for what people are talking about. So there's some people here, like, you can fact check what we talking about. We strongly encourage you to do that. And you'll find that what we're telling you is legitimate. We might make a mistake every once in a while, but if we do, we'll correct it. And if you bring it to our attention, we'll correct it. But most of the time, what you're getting here is clearly documented information. Whereas most of the stuff on social media, there's nothing holding it accountable to anything. So that increases the chances of misinformation. It makes the chances of misinformation almost guaranteed, because anybody can get on social media and say anything. Like the video I told you about with King Leopold in the Congo. They could say anything. Or talking about corrupt regimes being the reason why there's a problem in the Congo today. They can say anything. And most of us are not going to even know what steps to take to correct it, to correct the misinformation. So with that being the reality, when they give you misinformation and you don't even have a process to challenge it, some part of your brain is going to believe what they're telling you, whether you are aware of that or not. That's how propaganda works. If you don't have anything in your brain, if you didn't know, if you had never been told that the world was round and that it rotates and it revolves around the sun and the moons revolve around the earth, if you didn't learn that, it just say, for example, you never knew that, and somebody came to tell you today that the earth was flat, and they told you that every day, and you didn't understand science to refute that, because there's clear science to refute the analysis that the earth is flat. That's for those of you out here that believe that, because I know there's people that believe that. Because again, it's not a requirement to be able to have an analytical approach to anything in this world today. All you have to do is say something, and it has just as much value as someone who's researched the topic you're speaking about for decades. And that's incredibly insane, but that's the society we live in. So that's the problem. That's why we have to work so much harder to ensure that we can get correct information. And the only safeguard is organizing how you get your information. And that can only be done on a collective basis. It can't be done on an individual basis. That's why it worked the other day. I work for a labor union, and I did a training for some folks that are being bullied about how to stop the bullying. And I have all these best practices I give them, but I told them, there's no solution to your bully boss on an individual level. The only solution is we can organize all of you to come together and work together, and then we can create some very creative ways to get this a-hole off your back. This is what I do for a living. But if you're thinking you just can file a complaint or you can just do something individually, the chances of that working are slim to none. And that's with anything that has to do with alleviating oppression. There's very limited potential of being successful with an individual approach. You all know that. You've had jobs where you've been mistreated. What were you able to do on your own to stop that? Nothing. You've had situations where you faced racism. You've had that happen in your life. What have you been able to do individually to address that? Nothing. You just have to swallow that and deal with it, because this problem can't be solved on an individual. How can a problem that's impacting the masses of our people on a collective level be solved on an individual level? That right there, that it's nonsense if that's what you believe. So we have to realize that this political education we're talking about to combat this backward propaganda that's being aimed against us, we have to organize that political education on a collective level. Now, you can read and study things on your own. I do that better than most people, but you cannot rely on that, because the way that I've been able to develop my critical analysis skills is by participating in the work study cadre process that we talk about all the time, that we have in the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And what we do is we come together every 2 weeks and we read the same material, but we debate it, because the old saying that 2 heads are better than 1 is true. 5 heads are better than 2. 10 heads are better than 5. So you get different perspectives on the information, and you hear perspectives on the reading that you never thought of and you never would have thought of on your own. And that enhances your understanding of the reading. Even a complete person that just learned how to understand what I'm saying 5 minutes ago could understand the logic of what I just said and how that makes sense. Like, that's a much better process to increase your level of understanding than you just trying to figure out how to study stuff on an individual level. There's no question. There's no argument against that. And then the other fact is that once you're able to establish a process of getting information, quality information, then you have to, on a collective level, use that information to change our conditions. None of this can happen on an individual level. The gathering and obtaining of information is collective, and then how you utilize the information to engage in action to improve our conditions is collective. And that's how we make the change that we need to make, you all. That's it. That's the only way we do it. Like, I had some clown on social media was telling me, "You wasting your time with Africa. You need to," he's writing about this show. You're brainwashing your daughter, and you need to go down to the Sacramento. He apparently looked me up and figured out I lived in Sacramento. I don't hide the information, because these people threaten me all the time. Come on, you get one chance. I'm not going to sit here on social media and argue with people. That's a waste of my time. If you want to threaten me or whatever, you get one chance. I'm not hiding where I am. Bring your ass on out here, and we'll see how that goes. Maybe you win, maybe you lose. You win some, you lose some. We'll see how that goes. But this clown was out here and was talking about that and said, "Well, you should be at the Capitol helping them." Da, 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 da. And I'm like, "Well, you should do something, because you're not doing anything but being a keyboard clown." I said, "At least go ahead and start a page called Coons for Comment. At least do that. You do better than what you're doing right now." And he's like, "Well, I'm doing all." I'm like, "What are you doing? You obviously looked me up. So what are you doing?" Crickets. So this is the process that we have to use so that we can get stronger, you all, and get better. That's all. That's all we're talking about. engaging in mass political education, all of us making a commitment to participate. If you don't want to participate in the AAPRP work study circle process, join some other organization that has one. If you don't want to do what they're doing, start one of your own. You don't want to be as formal as how we do it. No problem with that. Start one of your own. But this is how we stop this stuff from happening. It's the only way we stop. Because if we do this, then we will create a whole new level of people who understand the difference between truth and the lies that this capitalist system tells. It can shut this stuff down so that it doesn't infect our kids. And once we begin to do that, then we can move forward, you all, in the direction that we need and certainly deserve. So we just want to thank you, certainly, for joining us today here for this program. We want to remind you, we have in the upper left-hand corner of our screen, we have the QR code that can tell you about all of the AAPRP programs that take place. You get information on Hood Communists, which is a revolutionary African blog that you most certainly should check out. Betterworld.me, you can access all of these videos if you want to share them, and we certainly hope you do. And our Forward Ever shop in AAPRP, where you can get African clothes. Y'all know you're going to be spending money for this capitalist holiday next month. So at least if you're going to compromise with that propaganda, then spend your money for something that contributes to the African Revolution. So go to our Forward Ever shop and buy something and gift that to someone. Not only are you contributing to the African Revolution, but then you're giving somebody something that can enhance their political consciousness. You can buy them a hoodie that says One Unified Africa. And then, well, why did you give? Well, then let's talk about why that's a good thing for them. Then you have an opportunity there to do that. So do that. You can go to aprp-intl.org and you can join the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And we certainly want to invite you next week, December 3rd, same time, same place. Yes, indeed, you all. We're going to do a deep dive, Zionist Israel and Africa. Zionist Israel and Africa. You are not going to want to miss this one. We are going to talk about the Zionist settler colonial state of Israel and how it could not exist without its exploitation of Africa. And that's why, as Kwame Ture said, every conscious African, independent of the Palestinian question, must be anti-Zionist. And all these people on here, social media, Brother Umar and all these other funny people talk about we got to be concerned about, anybody saying that, they're not in an organization. I don't care how articulate they are. They're not in an organization, because only an individual clown would talk like that. When you are in an organization and you're involved in struggle and you're building capacity for us to fight against the system that's oppressing us, then you know that the better the Palestinians do, the easier victory is for us in our fight. You know that. You know the better the indigenous people do in their fight, the easier it is for us in our fight. The only people that don't know that are people who are individualists and are just talking and making money, using our struggle to make our money, as the late warrior from the Black Panther Party, Geronimo G. Jaga, said. There are a lot of Black power pimps out here today. And y'all got to understand how to learn the difference between a Black power pimp and African revolutionaries. And so we're going to be talking next week about Zionist Israel and Africa. And we hope you join us. We hope you tell people. And we also want to, again, let you know about Burkina Books, the QR code on the bottom right of the screen, become a monthly sponsor and or just donate. But support AAPRP work on the ground for our efforts to achieve Pan-Africanism, the solution for our people. And my book, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. Please buy it. Please tell people. We're taking a trip up to Oregon to do some work. And that's how we fund that. Would love to do this type of work, doing the work in a lot of different places, actually. Would love to be able to do this work everywhere, but the way that I fund those efforts are through book sales. So please buy the book and tell people. We thank you for joining us. Come back next week, Zionist Israel and Africa. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday evening. Forward ever, backwards never.